So I was speaking with my friend Zhao Yu recently, and she told me this great story that captured my imagination. Recently, she's gotten into the world of live selling, and interestingly, she was inspired by her elderly aunt. Her aunt grew up quite poor in a regional province in China. She'd never had access to a great education and never learnt to read or write. Obviously, it had been difficult for her to find employment, but after the death of her husband, she'd been forced to go out and find work. So she'd tried a number of different things, but somehow she'd stumbled into this world of live selling and started to make a living from that. In the early days, she was just using her personal mobile phone. She would set it up, she would show off some products and sell through there. Today, she's got a dedicated room in her luxury apartment in the nice part of town with a dedicated lighting rig and a professional camera setup. Each time she goes online, Zhao Yu tells me she can earn up to $140,000 for each live selling session. Just fascinating. What this story teaches me is this future of connected retail that we keep hearing so much about. Well, it's no longer a future, it's here today. When we have the least tech savvy among us going online and earning $140,000 from a single live selling session, that tells me that connected retail is here and now. Not bad for someone who never learned to read or write. I'm Amer Iqbal, and in this episode, we're going to explore how ripples of innovation turn into tides of disruption and what organizations can do to ride the wave. Traditional wisdom over the last few decades has been that technology trends tend to originate out of Silicon Valley and then gradually filter out to the rest of the world over time. And to be fair, many tech trends of the past have followed exactly this pattern. Ride-hailing apps, the sharing economy, and many of the world's social media platforms were born in the US before the seeds spread and blossomed in the furthest corners of the globe. Here in Asia, we saw many industries simply copying and adopting a blueprint of progress from the West, slowly introducing incremental improvements. But more recently, we've seen an interesting dynamic at play here in Asia. Rather than simply following, we've seen startups and even corporates generating local homegrown innovation. And it makes a lot of sense. Why follow a roadmap that caters to the needs of customers on the other side of the planet? Wouldn't it be quicker to understand local behaviors and just shortcut to that? This has led to what's been termed the leapfrogging effect, where less mature markets skip over all of the small incremental steps and jump straight to the latest and greatest. One example that stands out is in the space of connected retail. I remember reading about the imminent disruption of the retail industry in the Australian press over a decade ago. But the reality in most of the Western world has been more a case of a long fuse of gradual incremental change rather than any kind of a big bang. However, the dynamic in Asia has been quite different. We've seen the rise of super apps, where you can not only hail a ride, but also do your grocery shopping, manage your investments, play games, and even book a massage, all in a single app. And it's all connected together with a single digital wallet that does away with the need for a traditional bank account. We've also seen societal changes like entire towns rising up, built around e-commerce fulfillment centers, and even school children being given classes on live selling via streaming apps. A far cry from my schooling days, that's for sure. But the question still remains, are these game changers in Asia actually filtering out to the rest of the world? Is Asia's connected retail boom actually having an impact and shaping things in the Western world? In this episode, we'll hear from the experts, industry analysts, and business leaders who are at the forefront of this shift and ask the question, is connected retail actually being led out of Asia? Boston Consulting Group have been an invaluable partner to many of the businesses and governments in Asia who have been driving this revolution. Our first step is to speak with Linda Zhou from BCG to see whether the experts are seeing this same trend.
I'm Linda Zhou, Managing Director and Partner at BCG. I lead the topic Future of Retail. When we looked at the pace of growth in Asia versus the West, Asia far surpasses most of the countries there. So if we look at in China specifically, e-commerce penetration is about 27%. South Korea is actually north of 40% as of this point. And if we look at the rest of the Western countries, UK is quite good, still at around 25, 26. But actually most, if you look at US and then most of the other Western countries, it falls significantly below 20%. The user experience in China historically has actually been frictionless because of the rise of the super app. So Alibaba and Tencent really introduced the concept of the super app actually, which means that you're able to for the consumer, buy your groceries and hail your rides, pay for products all through a single application. And over time, you've been able to have access to good content, educational content, or live streaming. That intersection all happens in one place, really. And Chinese consumers historically really use the app almost the way that Western consumers would use sort of Facebook or Instagram, because the content is constantly changing. And so it very much has been a frictionless experience. But in the West, historically, a lot of the apps historically have been very transactional. They're very separated. So you have one for social media, you might have another one for ride hailing, you have another one for e-commerce. It's not really integrated. And so the user interface has been historically much better in the East. Now, as we think about the East leading the West, as we think about that connected retail, what we see now is that the West also trying to pick up on this by creating this single ID, unifying ID, for the customer, and then being able to offer a wide variety of services and products with essentially under the same umbrella ecosystem. Southeast Asia has certainly picked up that trend. And what you see now is e-commerce players, retailers, banks, and even telcos really trying to build their digital ecosystems of their own. And what we now see is this competition to build the winning ecosystem in each of these markets. And we see that now growing everywhere. So in the West, for example, Walmart, Alibaba really trying to build these digital ecosystems of their own, where they offer not just retail or e-commerce experience, but also broadening that to, say, for the B2B space, logistics and cloud services.
Imagine if you asked a designer who had never shopped online to create an e-commerce experience from scratch. Would the journey look more like the fragmented experience that we've gotten accustomed to in the West? Or would it be more like the seamless experience we're seeing come out of China? We spoke with Alibaba to find out more about how they're leading the way. Alibaba's journey from e-commerce to super app has clearly set the pace for innovation in China, and the rest of the world is paying attention.
My name's Christina Fontana. I joined Alibaba in the Milan office 7 years ago. Originally, I was focused on helping brands reach our Chinese consumers. I am responsible for Director of Strategic Partnerships for Alibaba Group in Southern Europe. Our mission is to make it easy to do business anywhere. We help brands sell products to consumers, mostly in China. So today we'll be talking about two apps, Taobao, which is our consumer-to-consumer app, which is the first app that we launched, and Tmall, which actually stands for Taobao Mall and is the brand-to-consumer platform that we have developed. Taobao in China means searching for treasures. So these apps are designed to allow you to find everything that you could possibly need to fulfill your daily needs. And these started as shopping apps, but why do we talk about super apps now? We talk about super apps because we've moved beyond just selling people goods to providing all kinds of services. And the most important aspect is it's single sign-on and single checkout. So once I'm in the app, I can do everything without having to worry about logging in and passwords and how I'm going to pay. I think what's really important when we look at what's happened in China, China was a mobile-first economy. So all of our consumers are used to interacting directly on their mobile phone when they look at our apps. And this facilitates creating super apps. And it's also a trend that we see moving to the Western world, starting in Southeast Asia, where we have other apps like Lazada, but also moving into the West as we look at consumers. Even here where I am in Italy, people spend much more time on the internet on their phone now than they do on desktop. So this is facilitating the creation of super apps. I think there's two really important things that I would like to call out when we talk about Taobao. Number one is the personalization aspect. Every person who opens one of our apps, either Taobao or Tmall, sees personalized results. So the algorithm gives them exactly what they want to see. The second thing that's super important about our apps is they're very, very interactive. So we have live streaming, AR, VR, things that keep people coming back to the app multiple times during the day. In the West, when we think about eBay or Amazon, it's really about efficiency. I want to go online and buy as quickly as possible the thing I'm looking for. Our apps are different. They're about entertainment, discovery, looking for new products. So the engagement with customers is completely different. So when we think about Alibaba, most people in the West think of Alibaba as an e-commerce company. What many people don't know is that in China, we're heavily invested in physical retail. One of these formats is Hema. Hema, which we call Fresh Hippo in English, is a small convenience store that's completely digitized. And what we talk about often is about digitizing retail. So it's not only about that customer engagement that I've spoken about on the apps, but it's about what happens behind the scenes to make these things completely digital. The stores are completely covered with QR codes. So if I'm buying oranges, for example, I can scan the QR code and find out exactly where they're coming from, the entire story of the product. And checkout also is completely digitized. So it's self-checkout where I'm paying with Alipay, which is one of our apps. But the Hema stores are actually small distribution centers. So it allows us to distribute products more efficiently throughout China using these mini distribution centers. So we've revolutionized the retail experience, both from the consumer-facing side, but also more importantly, from the back end of how we distribute products to consumers. So we have dealt with from many different car manufacturers, from Maserati to Ford, BMW, just about every single major Western car brand is available on our platform. And I don't think it's something that we usually see in the West, this kind of interaction. So I'll give you an example. When Maserati wanted to launch their SUV, the Levante, in China, it's a very expensive car, they were able to sell out 100 Levante supercars in 18 seconds on our platform. How did they do that? So we mentioned before about how when I open Taobao or Tmall, I have personalized recommendations. So using our consumer insights, Maserati was able to serve the information about the cars they were launching to the people that were most likely interested in their cars. But again, this is just half of the story because that's what customers see online. We also helped Maserati digitize their stores in China. So people can have a fluid experience from looking at their Maserati online, playing with a configurator. Maserati even made an interactive game for Taobao so that people could test drive their Maseratis in a virtual world, and then bring that experience in store. So when they went to the dealership in China, they already had their car configured, but they could sit down and actually touch the leather, look at the paint, and complete their purchase directly live with a salesperson. Live streaming, I love talking about live streaming because we've all seen live streaming, and I think that we kind of have an idea of, yes, I know what live streaming is. I've seen Home Shopping Network, I've seen QVC, it's the same thing. It's true that live streaming is a one-to-many communication, so I'm talking to many people. That's how it used to work on TV. The way we do live streaming on Tmall and Taobao is completely different because it is an interactive experience. And what's fantastic about the technology is that brands can choose how to use this technology to connect with their consumers. Sometimes it is about, mass sales. We want to sell as many things as possible. It's a huge discount. It's one of the mega live streamers selling as many pieces possible in an hour. Other times, it's about brands really telling their brand story. So we can have the CEO of a luxury brand explaining about the craftsmanship and beauty of their products. So it's been very exciting to see how brands use this technology to reach their consumers. And again, the other half of that is how do consumers interact? So when the consumer's watching live streaming, they can give comments, they can ask questions, they can put things directly in their cart and complete their purchase directly during a live streaming session. So it's really super interactive, and this is what makes our super apps so engaging and fun for the consumers. And other innovations that we've used include things like virtual try-on, AR and VR. I'll give you a couple examples. IKEA launched their furniture store online on Tmall, and we used 3D positioning and imaging so that people could actually scan their room and then take the piece of IKEA furniture that they wanted to put in their house and kind of try it on virtually in the app to see if it would look good in their room. And the last one I want to talk about are the 3D stores, because they're really fantastic. So a 3D store allows us to completely digitize the store experience, and people can actually pick things up off the shelf and turn them around with the 3D imaging and see what the product looks like. But more than that piece of shopping, Coach did a fantastic example where Chinese consumers haven't been able to travel outside of China for the last 2 years, but they could virtually visit the flagship store in New York and see the latest products that are coming from international brands. So we have 1 billion consumers that are interacting with our platform every day. This is giving us huge insights into the kind of products that customers are looking for. So we have been developing over the last few years what we call consumer to manufacturing. So taking the insights from consumers and helping brands turn those things into products. For example, VF Corporation, that has brands like Dickies and many others, worked with Tmall Innovation Center to develop products specifically interested for Chinese consumers. Now, our Chinese consumers that we have online, they're much younger than brands consumers usually in the West. So it's very important that brands can adapt their products to the China market, which is becoming the biggest consumer market in the world. So brands need those kind of insights, and we share that with them so that they can make the best products possible for their consumers.
The trend with much of connected retail seems to be that new features and ideas like super apps are born in Asia, then gradually start to spring up and gain momentum in other parts of the world.
If we think about where connected retail really originated, I would say that it probably started first in China, and it's for a number of different reasons why it started in China. It had suddenly this, burgeoning middle class, this growth of disposable income within that middle class, and then China really leapfrogged a lot of the traditional retail mechanisms directly, actually, to digital commerce. Also elsewhere in Asia, whether that's South Korea or whether that's Southeast Asia, we see that being sort of taken to the next level now. So if we actually think about social commerce really as a percentage of e-commerce, in China, I believe now it's actually pretty close to 25 to 30%, and in the West is still at 3%. But at the same time, we see this massive continued growth in both the East and the West. So in the East, I think it's growing at 60%. So huge, huge continued growth as the technology gets better, as content creators really find more innovative ways to link the content with the commerce. But also in the West, it's still at the moment a bit more experimental, but we see that double-digit growth as well. So I would still say that concept of social commerce and live streaming really started in the East, but we see that very much emerging and growing in the West as well.
Up until 2021, the brand name Grab probably didn't mean a lot to anyone outside of Southeast Asia. However, since being listed on the NASDAQ, the unicorn that began life as a humble ride-sharing app is beginning to capture its fair share of global attention.
In this part of the world, Grab is the super app to Southeast Asia, home to 8.5% of the world's population. So if you've ever lived in Asia, you'll know that the services people buy in Singapore and the services people want in Jakarta are completely different. And that is also different between a big town like Jakarta or Manila and a small town like Pampanga or Palembang. And what's really unique about the Grab super app is as an ecosystem of services, the app looks completely different when you open it depending on what town or city you open it in. So we started 10 years ago as a taxi hailing service, and that made lots of people call us the Uber of Southeast Asia. I think the path in the first couple of years quickly diverged from what Uber looks like today because Grab took a very hyper-local path. So not only do you have cars, but majority of our drivers are actually bike drivers We also have tuk-tuks in countries where that's the primary form of transportation. We also have trikes in towns where trikes are a major form of transportation. We have pet taxis in Singapore, and we have people that come to you without a car to drive your car home after a big night of drinking in Bangkok. And so even in the transportation business, it's hyper-local. But very soon, we realized that with such a large fleet of drivers, it's our job also to keep them earning throughout the day, not just rush hour, right? So that gave birth to the food delivery business. And during COVID, the grocery business also took off. So today, the deliveries business, whether that's food, groceries, parcel delivery, is actually a far larger part of our business than actually the original business, which was ride hailing. So last December, we noticed something peculiar, which is a small group of users figured out how to use the Grab app to send last-minute gifts to someone in their family or their friend in another country. And what they did was they went to the Grab app, they manually took their finger and went into the map and moved the pin to another country. And what that does is that it tricks the Grab app to believing you're actually in Manila. And therefore, they proceed to order cakes and flowers from a florist or a bakery in Manila. So no online forms, no international bank transfers, no, getting on a phone call, no fuss. Your flowers and cake just arrived to your mom in 30 minutes. And so we looked at that and we're like, that's pretty weird. I wonder how many other people would want to do that if they didn't have to do this manual map thing. And so we developed a better product and launched it in 3 months in time for Christmas. And that's been pretty awesome, actually. It's a completely new behavior that was taught to us by a bunch of hacky customers.
If connected retail truly is a trend born in Asia, does that mean there are limited opportunities for companies elsewhere in the world? Alex Maisel is a product marketing manager at Meta. He knows a thing or two about connected retail, having spent much of his past life in the world of e-commerce. Alex agrees that we're now at a point where companies anywhere in the world can capitalize on the connected retail boom. Here he is, sharing some of the ways Meta is helping brands put the theory into practice.
Over the past decade or so, e-commerce has changed rapidly and drastically. Ever since Alibaba launched its first Singles Day in November 2009, we've seen two divergent trends appearing. In the East, we have seen apps targeting for browsing behavior and interaction with content on their own e-commerce platforms, whereas in the West, we have seen much more optimization for conversion and transactional behavior. For example, we see Tmall in China, where consumers spend up to 27 minutes a day browsing the app, which is very different behavior from what we see on Amazon in the US and in Europe. During the pandemic, and more than ever, we saw services and businesses move online. This covered industries such as healthcare, but also education, services, and retail as well. While this shift is dramatic, it's not unexpected, it's just early. These innovations were really sped up by the pandemic. They were inevitably going to happen, but perhaps in 5 or 10 years, would we see this sort of behavior between consumers and platforms where augmented reality was a lot more commonplace. Now they're here, they're already being used by brands and platforms, and consumers as well are asking for them across the region. In the past few years, some really interesting emerging technologies and innovations that spring to mind have been number one, live shopping and live streaming. Number two would be, I think, augmented reality. And number three is really the emergence of conversational commerce. And if I double click into each of those just a little bit, live streaming and live shopping really started in China with Alibaba and the Tmall platform and Taobao as well. And we've seen this roll out across the region where players such as Pomelo in Thailand in 2020 partnered with KOLs and influencers to bring that live shopping service or innovation in-house. So they had that first as a live streaming service within their app. And then after a few years, they evolved that into a live shopping experience where consumers could watch the video of a KOL wearing the fashion item and then buy it directly from within the app. This is something that not only have we seen appear here in APAC, but also the US market. Instagram live shopping has really taken off. We're seeing this in smaller pockets here in Southeast Asia as well, with Taiwan and Thailand really leading the charge. Augmented reality was next, and I think we've seen that evolve in various different ways for different industries. So for example, you might have players such as Dyson, who might want to show consumers what their latest vacuum cleaner or fan might look like in the comfort of their own home by using an augmented reality filter from within their app or their website to showcase really the size, the color, and all of these different details that they would have normally not been able to interact with before from a consumer perspective. This is something that we've really seen Instagram take a lead on. You can try out your own augmented reality filters for things like lipsticks, all within Instagram, and this is available globally already. So lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is conversational commerce, which really in the Asia Pacific region we have seen for a number of years, and perhaps even longer than that informally, where the relationship between seller and buyer is in fact a lot more conversational and interactive than in many other parts of the world in the same space. It's very common here in Asia Pacific for buyers to communicate with sellers on a much more frequent basis before they actually make a purchase or transfer money or agree to pick something up from the shop. This is something that we've really seen emerge drastically over the course of the pandemic, when of course that interaction would not be possible face-to-face or physically in physical proximity due to social distancing measures, and this all moved online into platforms such as WhatsApp and Messenger. Meta's business messaging solutions, or CTX, is really what we are encouraging businesses to use here in APAC, where consumers can interact with a brand or a business or a retailer from within any of the Facebook family of apps and have it land directly to WhatsApp or Messenger or Instagram Messenger as well. This is something that we're really seeing take off in countries such as Thailand, where businesses are already being able to direct their consumers from their Instagram pages to transaction all within the Meta family of apps. So brands and advertisers are really taking note of what they're seeing and what they're learning from e-commerce, the emergence of some of these innovations that I mentioned earlier from the Asia Pacific region, and they're really rolling them out to other parts of the world where they already operate in. For example, FMCG brands have really learned a huge amount from conducting business with players such as Tmall in China, where they were the first to really pilot schemes such as Magic Mirror, where you could see the lipstick on your face within the app. And they're really taking these technologies and rolling them out in markets ahead of other players that are only present in that market. So for example, L'Oreal might have taken some of this Magic Mirror learning from China and started to roll it out in France before any of the big e-commerce platforms were really ready to offer that as a solution for brands. We're also seeing this appear not only in Europe, but also in North America, with higher demand from brands that have already learned from the APAC region as a whole. While e-commerce is about buyers finding products, discovery commerce is about products finding buyers. Discovery commerce really sits at the core and at the heart of this interaction between brand and consumer, where we are able to really direct across the whole of the funnel from discovery and interaction all the way through to transaction and conversion within the Meta suite of products. As an example, you might be browsing Facebook or Instagram and you might see a nice leather wallet that appears in your feed. But you already have a wallet, but maybe it's a little bit old. So perhaps you might click through, you might browse the store of the seller on Facebook or Instagram, and then that will lead you to interacting with the seller and finding out that not only do they make this wallet in black leather, but they also make it in brown. Only through this interaction, all within the Meta family of apps, have you been able to really have this interaction instantaneously and effortlessly, enabling you to decide very quickly whether you want to buy this product or sort of continue browsing. Discovery leads to transaction. And Meta solutions and our platforms are really well positioned to help guide consumers and brands along this journey from discovery of products or solutions and services all the way through to transaction, all happening within the Meta solutions. So going a little bit back to what I was talking about earlier with augmented reality, it's not just Magic Mirror and FMCG that has really benefited from this, but also brands such as Samsung in the Philippines, where they partnered with Meta and specifically Facebook to run an augmented reality solution where consumers could hold the latest Samsung Galaxy phone in their hand to really get an idea of what the size would be, how it would look if you placed it on the table. And this is something that Samsung really enjoyed building with Meta and saw some great results. And they then afterwards decided to roll it out in different markets and also within their own app and website as well. So this was a key sort of success story that we've seen on the discovery commerce side. Another innovation in the augmented reality space that saw some great success was with Shiseido. Their Hong Kong branch actually partnered with Meta to run, again, some Magic Mirror moments where through Instagram, Shiseido users were able to see what a particular face mask might look like on their face or a lipstick. So whilst these innovations might seem perhaps trivial sometimes, the engagement that you have seen from a consumer lens is really exciting for brands as it really ramps up the type of back and forth communication that you are seeing and browsing behavior within Meta platforms that then essentially transacts as a conversion further down the line. There is an opportunity through the Meta Discovery Commerce solutions and platform to really roll out these innovations and opportunities for brands and consumers globally. The Discovery Commerce solutions are available everywhere. The innovations are also all included as part of this Discovery Commerce package. So this is one area that brands can really lean on to help expand their innovations and engagement opportunities with consumers, not only in APAC, but also in North America, the Middle East, and Europe as well.
Well, the theory checks out. For the first time, we're seeing a shift in the way global tech trends are disseminated across the world. From super apps to digital wallets, live shopping to leapfrogging, it's clear that the trend of connected retail is being led by Asia. And this shift is opening up new opportunities for businesses anywhere in the world. The result has been a great equalization, a new age that is allowing traditional retailers, small businesses, and entire communities to benefit from this rapidly expanding digital wave. But this story doesn't end with where we are today. The best is yet to come. We asked our experts what they think the future of connected retail has in store.
I think in about 5 years' time, what I would imagine is that we see a lot more of consolidation in terms of these digital ecosystems in different markets. In the East, that consolidation will probably happen faster, which means that you will have very distinct, the Tencent and Alibabas really coming to a rise, especially in the Southeast Asian countries and in other emerging markets as well. It will be a little bit slower in the West just because the market is much more fragmented. But already we begin to see a few of the rise of these large digital ecosystem giants, even in the US. They will face continuous competition against each other, and we will see them taking a stronger foothold in the market.
I think we're really going to see a blurring or a consolidation between online and offline. We will see offline businesses, which are traditionally brick and mortar, ramp up their presence online through platforms such as Meta, and by return, we will also see traditionally digital natives who set up their businesses during the pandemic online open things like pop-ups in department stores and traditionally brick and mortar locations. In addition, we will see that businesses that were traditionally skewed towards browsing and engagement behavior will bring in transactional or conversion type solutions to try and push people down the funnel. And again, by return, we will see behavior from traditionally conversion-led businesses who will bring in innovations such as live streaming or live shopping, which are much more heavy on the engagement and browsing behavior.
I think for retailers and brands everywhere, the challenge going forward and what we're going to see things look like is a complete integration and full digitization of retail. So on one hand, we've already seen a lot of development on the consumer-facing side of what our apps look like and how people can interact with brands online. And we will always see more of this, more live streaming, more AR, more VR, more interaction from at home. But one thing that we will move away from is this idea that online and offline retail are two separate worlds. When we talk about digitizing retail, brands and retailers need to digitize the entire process of selling things to people, both on their merchandising allocation, making sure they have the products in the right place, making sure that they have the right products for the right consumers in the right location. And so in the next 5 years, I think we'll see fantastic evolution and really an upgrading of how brands use digital to run their businesses.